Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Welcome back. Our topic for this video is the adrenal gland. So we have this nice little picture of a model from our lab. Primarily what you're seeing here is the pancreas. But you can also see kidney on either side. This organ right here is the spleen. So we're seeing the pancreas in the middle, and then we're getting a kidney on the left side and a kidney on the right side. And then sitting on top of those kidneys is that small triangular shaped gland called the adrenal gland. Now remember, we talked about the adrenal gland as sort of triangular in shape. So if you want to draw a big triangle and a small triangle, we can label the large triangle the cortex, and we can label the middle triangle the medulla. And so the medulla, remember, we already talked about, is producing epinephrine and norepinephrine. Those are being released as hormones. We talked about that extensively as part of our sympathetic nervous system response. What we want to focus in on here then instead is the adrenal cortex. So when we look at our cortex, we do see that it can be broken down into 3 different zones or layers. And we're going to be looking at our zona glomerulosa as our most superficial. So that means like outermost. Next, we have a zona fasciculata. And then we have zona reticularis, which we can say is our most deep or innermost. So zona reticularis is going to be closest to the medulla. When we talk about the adrenal cortex, we'll see that they're going to be releasing corticosteroids. So steroids tell us that we are getting the release of lipids here, lipid-derived hormones. And remember, we talked about the adrenal gland, the cortex being stimulated by, so let's do our stimulated by here, our adrenocorticotropic hormone, which we can abbreviate capital ACTH. So our ACTH from the adeno hypophysis is going to trigger the cortex of the adrenal gland to be releasing these corticosteroids, which are these lipid-derived hormones coming. Okay, so remember, our corticosteroids are lipids, and so this means that they're going to have an intracellular receptor. And we're going to see that each one of these layers is going to produce a different group of corticosteroids. So when we look at this outermost layer, the zona glomerulosa, we're going to see that these are going to produce a group that we will collectively talk about as mineralocorticoids. And we can abbreviate this whole group as capital MC and then apostrophe S. And we'll see that they're involved in fluid and electrolyte balance. But we have one in particular that we're going to pay attention to, and that is aldosterone. This is one along with that antidiuretic hormone that comes up on repeat. So we'll talk about it. We talk about them together, actually. So we'll see aldosterone involved in regulation of blood pressure and blood volume. We'll see it involved in our urinary system. We'll see it involved in our regulation of our fluids and our electrolytes. So aldosterone is being released here by the zona glomerulosa, and its job is to increase the excretion of our potassium ion and increase our retention of our sodium ion. And so both of these things are happening at the kidney. So our target tissue for aldosterone is the kidney. When we look at the middle layer of the cortex, the zona fasciculata, we're going to see that this layer is releasing what we collectively talk about as glucocorticoids. And we can abbreviate our glucocorticoids as capital GC and then apostrophe S. And here what we see happening a lot of times is that this is going to inhibit tissue building. We see that these hormones are going to be involved in like breaking down our stored nutrients. And here we have one to emphasize. A lot of you maybe are already familiar with cortisol. So cortisol, a lot of times we think of as our stress hormone, and cortisol will also be involved in decreasing our immune response. It's acting as an anti-inflammatory. And then we see it's also, you know, collectively, when we talk about breaking down stored nutrients, what we mean is we're going to convert glycogen to glucose. We're going to convert our triglycerides to our fatty acids. We saw some of the same kind of activity with our growth hormone, but we'll also see that we can break down our muscle in order to release amino acids. Okay. And then the deepest layer, so the innermost layer of the adrenal cortex is the zona reticularis. And here we see the production collectively of what we can call androgens. And the androgens can be converted, let's put it here, converted to either testosterone or estrogen in body tissues. So the adrenal cortex, we're going to see, is very involved in our stress response. So let's talk about the stress response next.